afternoon, and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Ellen Block, Chief Operating Officer at Keep Financials. I'm also very proud, this is so funny. I'm very proud to be not only a member, but also a member of the board and to serve as our treasurer. We're also grateful to the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for presenting today's live stream, which is being carried out on CMC's social media platforms. Let's thank all those supporting today's forum. And now, if you're hungry for today's community conversation, let's get to it. This is great. If ghost kitchens sound scary, they're not. In fact, the delivery-only restaurants are popping up everywhere and foodies love them. Fueled by the need to get creative during the pandemic, restaurant operators continue to flock to this new business model with its low startup costs. The keys are smartphone apps that make it easy to order food and minimal everything, minimal footprints, minimal staff, and minimal investment capital with the would-be restaurateurs. Today, we welcome industry insiders for a look behind the scenes at ghost kitchens and how this disruptive model is taking over takeout. Please welcome today's speakers. And I'm sorry, guys, I didn't double check your pronunciations of your names, so just bear with me. Yeah, Chris Baggett, co-founder and CEO of Cluster Truck. John Barker, president and CEO of the Ohio Restaurant Association. Bennett Goldberg, partner with Maker's Kitchen. Lisa Gutierrez, CEO and co-founder of Dos Hermanos Taco Truck. And our host, Susan Post, associate editor of Columbus Underground. You can read about today's panelists in your forum flyers. Susan, welcome. The podium is all yours.
Thank you, Ellen. As with most facets of our lives, technology is changing how we eat. The average third-party delivery app like UberEats or DoorDash offers literally hundreds of options for nearly every kind of cuisine, all available to arrive at our doorsteps with the touch of a few buttons. It's a mix of familiar favorites, mom-and-pop neighborhood spots, well-known chains, and that restaurant that's only a half a mile away that you've never heard of. You stumbled upon the virtual restaurant, a restaurant operating out of another facility like a ghost kitchen or another restaurant's kitchen that's only accessible through pickup or delivery. It might even share a menu with the restaurant it shares a kitchen with, just marketed under a different name. For example, many customers felt duped when the Pasquale's Pizza and Wings they were ordering at the onset of the pandemic turned out to be none other than Chuck E. Cheese. Virtual brands and ghost kitchens accelerated in popularity during the pandemic when pickup and delivery were the only way for the industry to survive. As the Wild West begins to tame, what advantages and disadvantages do these entities have? Ghost kitchens, large commercial kitchen facilities that are typically made up of several smaller kitchens, like Maker Kitchens, have several advantages, like lower barrier to entry and shorter-term leases, and they're not just for restaurants looking to offer delivery. They can provide commercial kitchen space for the other food-based businesses like caterers or food trucks. Virtual brands that typically only exist on third-party apps, can help consumers discover new facets of a restaurant's menu and find literally almost any kind of food, anytime, anywhere. But it's also become an algorithm-based game to get your burger or pizza or chicken tenders to the top of the search. Pros, cons, apps, and algorithms. Let's dig into it all. So first of all, I gave some quick definitions of how I typically define ghost kitchens and virtual brands in my intro, but I just want to open up the discussion with how you all define them to make sure we're all on the same page. So does your definition vary from my definition? Anyone?
You know, I think you have, it's tough. A ghost kitchen to me is a kitchen being run out of another kitchen. So another brand that is run out of an existing restaurant's kitchen. Virtual brands are completely made up brands that go into any kitchen. So Mr. Beast Burger obviously is the most famous example, but, everyone thought, we're going to get the, I want to say Hollywood Housewives or whatever that's called, Desperate Housewives salads, and we'll sell those out of any restaurant, no quality control. And then, something we do at Cluster Truck is we're a delivery kitchen. So we're very focused on the only constituency for us is, in fact, the delivery customer. So we're a full-blown restaurant, and there are lots of us all over the country, but, we're a full-blown restaurant that only delivers. But we control the food, we control the drivers, the entire experience. So to me, those are kind of the three categories. And then also what Bennett does, which is more a space.
Yeah, we're a little bit different. And I remember, when Doug emailed me, I said, you need to have Chris on here too, because between the two of us, we do two separate things to the same conclusion. So we started building kitchen space in 2015, long before UberEats, DoorDash, pandemic. And what we had done was just started building kitchens for anybody who needed a health department approved facility. So it was mostly caterers, bakeries, farmers markets, and the largest type of tenant we still have are consumer packaged goods. So, when you're at Whole Foods and all that stuff like hot sauce, spaghetti sauce that's made locally, a lot of that stuff's made in kitchens like ours. And then once the pandemic, and we always had a few restaurants, and I was always kind of like, that's a pretty cool deal. The Jamaican jerk chicken, there's a big Jamaican population in North Hollywood, and they were doing the restaurant, the delivery jerk chicken back in like 2016. But since the pandemic, we've seen, we lost, our caterers were going down like flies, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and we thought, oh crap, what are we gonna do? But they were replaced so quickly with restaurants. So we've really learned, along with everybody else, how these restaurants work. So, we're just landlords. We build on spec. We'll usually build anywhere from 20 to 30 kitchens, and kind of turnkey. Come in, start your concept. We give you everything you need to do. And so the difference between like what Cluster Truck and Chris is doing is where they're running and managing everything. We're just kind of creating the space for them to succeed. So.
I just love the name, Ghost Kitchens. Anybody loves it? I mean, just when you first hear that, first time I heard that was about 2015, and I remember thinking, no, wait a minute, is that the Buxton Inn in Granville? Some of you know, the haunted, I said, that's a ghost kitchen out there, right? But it's obviously become something very different. And I got to tell you, one of the things that I said, at least during the depths of the pandemic, I think ghost kitchens and virtual kitchens saved friendships and marriages and, all that kind of stuff when we got, hey, we're all going to cook at home. Right? That's great. We're going to watch the cooking show. We're going to cook at home. And then that got tired, right? And people said, I can't go out. I'm going to just start getting more food delivered. And these brands really took off, and we saw a big evolution of ghost kitchens and a lot of virtual brands. And it just accelerated our industry at a pace that we hadn't seen for quite some time. So thank you for saving all those marriages and friendships, and we'll keep going.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like Chuck E. Cheese and Mr. Beast Burger, they gave the whole industry a black eye because it's not good food. And they're tricking you, right? And you can fool everybody once, but then they're like, well, this Mr. Beast Burger is cool. My kids watch him on YouTube, but the burger tastes terrible.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get into that here shortly. But you guys have actually answered my next couple of questions, but wanted to dig in a little bit more to some of the advantages you see for these business models, whether that's ghost kitchens or virtual brands.
I think our advantage was we changed our commissary kitchen into a ghost kitchen, if you will. We were already in a commissary kitchen. We rent our space for Dos Hermanos through ECDI. The name of our commissary kitchen is Food Fort 2.0. And this is where we were supposed to house our food trucks, and that's what we were doing pre-pandemic. When the pandemic hit, we quickly realized that we were in a food desert, and we had an opportunity, like John talked about, of bringing people together and saving marriages. We were actually saving a neighborhood. A gentleman walked up and he pressed the doorbell and said to me, "Can I have a burrito?" And I thought to myself, as the laptop is on the desk, watching DeWine about closing and how we can morph and continue to operate. And I said, "Why are you here today to purchase a burrito? We haven't sold any food from this building for the 4 months leading up to this." And he said to me, "There's no bus." He said, "The bus has been stopped and down to a Sunday schedule for this neighborhood." And they had no access to fresh food. So I think that was a turning point in Dos Hermanos with using the ghost kitchen model from the existing commissary kitchen that we were renting to go from, profit-driven and always the numbers to coming from a place from service. So that's actually what we use our ghost kitchen for now, is that we offer a $2 reduced price point to an underserved community, and we have a lunch and dinner option from that commissary kitchen. But it still is very much where we do Uber, DoorDash, and all of those. It's funny, I looked at the numbers before we came. So last year, this month, in 2 years, 2022, we did 700 orders per week. We now do 2,700 orders per week 1 year later. So just to give you an idea of how this is growing.
Great. I want to talk about virtual brands specifically a little bit. Chris, I know Cluster Tuck's model has always been to make the food in-house. You supply, or you control the delivery supply chain. But you ever thought about adding any other virtual brands into your kitchens?
So we started in 2015. We opened here in Columbus, we're from Indy. This is our first outside of Indianapolis. We opened here in very early 2017. So we're been doing this way pre-pandemic. And the way I looked at it was, you've got this very growing business, which is prepared food delivery, and you have three major constituencies: customers, drivers, and restaurants themselves, the preparers of the food. And this hasn't changed in whatever, we're getting close to 10 years now. None of these people are happy, right? Like, nobody's ordering prepared, delivered food for any kind of real culinary quality experience. Like, it's going to be tepid and delayed. The drivers aren't making money, they're exploited, so they're not happy still. And the restaurants don't really make money because they're having to compensate for high compensations, and they're at the mercy of these, third-party masters. And, so we're like, let's just solve all of this by being vertically integrated. So a long answer to your question is, it's difficult for us because ours is an entire system, right? Every single ingredient. First question, somebody wants to make something new, John Cantor back there, who runs our operations, is what do we already have in the kitchen, right? Shared ingredients. So when we first started, and the reason it came up as Cluster Truck was, I was going to license food truck recipes, and we'll make your recipe, and I tried to sell it to them like a record label. Like, I want to hear the song, but I can't come to the concert today. We'll make your food. Well, 20 different food trucks. Food trucks come and go very quickly. Congratulations on your success, because that's unusual in the food truck business, right? So investing in that. And they all had their own specs on ingredients, and it just didn't work. So we really took a food truck, cheesecake factory model, scratch kitchen, shared ingredients, super, super broad, but yet high quality menu. And that's why it's hard for us to bring in anything that we don't actually invent.
I think you see a lot of that with virtual brands. There's the Columbus Food Hall, and there's about 6 restaurants that have tons of overlap between their menu. Speaking to that shared ingredient. Ben, I wanted to ask you, does Maker Kitchens have a policy on virtual brands for its tenants, whether they can or can't do them, and kind of why or why not?
No, but we can tell if someone's not doing something right. We don't want to put somebody in, set somebody up to fail. So there is kind of a sweet spot, between 3 and 5 brands. Otherwise, you're either not doing, if you're doing too many brands, you're not doing it well. If you're not doing enough, you might be leaving money on the table. So for instance, we have a taco guy in San Diego who's got 4 brands: burritos, tacos, enchiladas, and quesadillas. But he's like, well, I was thinking about doing another taco brand. Well, it doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah. Do you start to compete against yourself at some point, essentially?
Yeah, I'm not smart enough to really know how all the apps work. But yeah, I do think that there's a sweet spot that you don't really want to go above. But the other thing we try to tell people too is do what you're good at, because if you want to run a ghost kitchen, you need to be good at marketing and cooking. You have to do both really well. You can't just make great food. Nobody's going to find it. You can't be a great marketer because they're going to try it once. It's not good.
Yeah. Well, especially with virtual brands, you don't have your name on the outside of the building, so you've really got to think about how you're going to get in front of customers and build that awareness. I know we've been discussing virtual brands and how they're typically only available through third-party delivery apps, but they're far from the only restaurants utilizing these services. Lisa, I saw that Dos Hermanos utilizes third-party delivery services. Can you tell us a little bit about when you started doing that and why you decided to get on these apps?
Absolutely. So we were early on in the game before pandemic. We were actually the first restaurant to sign up with UberEats. And I had no idea what Uber even was, to even take a Uber or a vehicle or a taxi. But my cashier was very excited about Uber and even more excited about Uber Eats. So he said to me, you've got to get on this. The rep has been walking around the North Market trying to get people to sign up. We were actually the first restaurant to sign on the dotted line. Someone came out and did a story on us, and they actually tracked from when they ordered the food to the restaurant. It was all everywhere. And I saw revenue right away, right? I'm maximizing the existing staff that's sitting in the North Market, maybe 4 or 5 people, and now all of a sudden I'm not waiting for someone to come to me, but I'm able to have, 17 orders at one time that can go out simultaneously with different drivers. So that's, how we started on the platforms. When we were talking about virtual restaurants, we sell chicken wings at Dos Hermanos on the tablets from the Food For It 2.0, and it's our way of testing a brand that we would like to see come to fruition called Matt P's Wing House. Matt P is my son, and he has secret recipes. He tested them at night. I'm like, why is this customer asking for this sauce? It's supposed to be like barbecue and garlic and something else, buffalo, and now all of a sudden they're asking for the secret sauce, but I'm like, I don't know if this is good or bad. He works the overnight shift, which is actually interesting. Dos Hermanos serves until 2:30 a.m., actually. So if you're ever looking for late night food, that's us. And why we did that is because we don't want to share the market with the Condados and some of our competitors, right? So I looked long and hard, where can we show up safely at a time when we can have most of the market share, and that's from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. So our commissary kitchen opens 7 days. So lots of different opportunities, and it has grown, over the years. It's a strategic partnership. Yes, when we showed up on the platform, we were paying the same fees that everybody does when they show up, the fees that hurt restaurants that they talked about here, but we've negotiated that strategically over the years to where it's a win-win for both us and the third-party delivery partner.
The fees that third parties charge, when we first started to really dig into this in 2020, we found that at 32%, you couldn't make money. So even though it was driving some revenue on the top line and keeping people employed, people couldn't make money. And so you may recall in Columbus and Cleveland, Cincinnati, Toledo, and it's our bigger cities in Ohio, we negotiated with city government to lock fees in at 15% for everybody, including mom and pops, all the way up to anybody who needed it. And it's now reverted back to sort of what the market drives and how good you are at negotiating. But that's a real big issue, in this whole business. That, if you can't, I remember people telling me, I'm going to stop delivering and just hope people, come to my location. And I said, good luck. I don't know how you can drive the revenue that way. So.
Well, that was actually one of my questions is, over the years, I've heard a lot of pushback from restaurants about the fees or the quality of the food associated with using these apps. So it sounds like there has been some negotiation to lock those in, but, kind of open question to all, and, maybe Lisa, you can speak to this too, since you've been on there for a long time. How have the relationships between restaurants and third-party delivery services gotten better, or is it really just, you've got to be on there now because it's just how you do business?
I'll say this, looking at it globally, because we obviously look at across the United States and then here in Ohio, what we see is the relationship is still strained because the delivery businesses are saying they're not making enough money. Their model hasn't really turned to a profitable business yet. And, they have shareholders they have to deal with. The drivers say they're not, to your point, the drivers aren't making quite enough money. And the restaurants, if you're paying 30%, you're really strained on your P&L from that. So that model is still working its way out. And I see some restaurants kind of bringing delivery back in. It's difficult because labor's so tight. But I see the pizza industry in particular pulling some of that delivery back in and doing it themselves. They think they can do it better and at a lower cost. We're in a major evolution in the restaurant industry, unlike, anything I've seen in about 30 years.
And that's what's been so fun about this, just in the last, 4 years of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars being thrown at the wall to find business models that work. The biggest risk to restaurants today using third parties is they cannot make money, right? So you're betting your business on a super sandy foundation that there is no way for DoorDash to make money except fees, right? There is no economies of scale, right? Because their core economics are a driver averages 1.2 jobs an hour, right? So if I want to pay that driver $20 an hour, how can I possibly do that at 1.2 jobs an hour and charge 15% to the restaurant and $1 to the customer? Of course, they're all subsidizing free delivery now. Like, the whole thing just doesn't work, and that's what we were looking at back in 2016. We recognized that the key to the castle here is the driver, and it comes down to jobs per hour. So having a centralized facility with a broad menu where I can feed the chicken eater and the vegetarian eater and the cheeseburger eater and the pizza in a 7-minute radius means that I can get my drivers minimally 4 jobs an hour. So I was looking before I came, our drivers in Columbus last week averaged $8.69 a job and averaged 5 jobs an hour. So they're making plenty of bank. Like, we have a waiting list of drivers over 700 long in Columbus, Ohio. We don't need them, because the other thing is...
Don't tell anybody.
Well, it's, but the other thing is that, I lost my thought. Never mind, I talked too much.
You know, the Uber drivers that we talk to are telling us that they toggle back and forth to make money. They toggle back and forth in the same shift between delivering food and delivering people.
Right.
And that's the way that they figure out the model based on kind of, you know, what sort of demand is going on. Because oftentimes, you know, you have surge demand for the vehicles, right, obviously, at times around dinner time and things like that. And so, you know, they toggle back and forth. So they've started to figure it out, particularly the Uber drivers. Yeah.
But if you get in an Uber, which I ride a lot of Ubers, I travel quite a bit, as I know Bennett does, and you probably do, I always ask, you ever drive food? And the answer is either never or once. Like, you know, there really isn't that much crossover. Like, Dara, the CEO of Uber, will tell you, oh yeah, your drivers are in, and that's not what's happening out there. Food delivery is the worst job in the entire gig economy. Our whiteboard number 1 in 2015 for Cluster Truck was, let's take this worst job in the gig economy and make it the best job. And, you know, you do that by, you know, we call it dignity, right? How do we bring dignity to this gig economy, this particular low level here?
The economics that we're trying to help with, so Chris is actually solving for one side of this for the drivers, and we're trying to solve this for the restaurant people, right? So let's say you've got a 3,000 square foot restaurant on a 6,000 square foot lot. You've got a 10-year lease. You're paying 10, 12 grand a month for, you know, rent, all of your front of office staff, back of office staff. You've got bills, you know, you've got all your utilities and everything. Of course, you can't pay 30% on. You're not gonna make money. But with us, if your rent is $2,600 and you're only got 2 guys in there and they're cranking out. So here's one interesting metric is that across the board, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most restaurants are about 30 to 35% of all their orders are to go. What our tenants are doing is paying $2,600 a month to us. We cover all your utilities, and they're capturing that 30 to 35% of to-go orders with 2 cooks. And now all of a sudden the economics make perfect sense. It's really easy. We also, thanks to, you know, to a lot of the restaurant associations, we also have software that cuts all of the third-party fees down to 15% that they use when you're in one of our kitchens. So it makes sense if your rent is $2,600 for everything and you got 1 or 2 people. So we're kind of on the other end of the spectrum, but.
I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit to customer sentiment. You know, I've done some perusing on these third-party delivery platforms, and there are literally just hundreds and hundreds of options for basic dishes like a pizza or burger or chicken, and I personally find it really overwhelming. You know, and in doing some research, some of this plethora of options is coming from restaurants segmenting out their menus, you know, of which there are numerous examples. I already mentioned the Pasquale's Pizza, but you see things like Denny's and Burger Den or Red Robin and Fresh Set. You know, so just open question to everyone. Do you think we've kind of hit a saturation point with this, particularly kind of with virtual brands?
Hope not. We like to see as many new restaurants as we can see. I think it's good for consumers, but of course, it puts tremendous pressure on those who are already open. And one of the things we're seeing in the numbers is that the larger chains that have the capital as well as the intellectual capital to drive the new innovation are doing a really good job with this, and they're taking their delivery numbers higher, and they negotiate down their delivery fees to under 10% because they have scale, obviously, when they negotiate. So that's one segment. We watch our kind of sit-down restaurants, and so just think of like a Rusty Bucket type restaurant. They're starting to rebuild a little bit higher than it was in the last few years, and more sit-down business, a little less delivery because people want that experience. And so it really depends on the segment that you're looking at. Is there enough or not enough? You and I were talking before that there is a segment of the population, based on our research, that says, I'm interested in fuel. So I want a lot of food, and I want it as cheap as possible, and I'm okay if it doesn't taste fantastic when it gets to me. That's like a segment, and it's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's, and I'm generalizing, right? It's,
You need food?
I have a son who's 25. He's in that category, right? So, and so, you have to figure out what you're going to go after, from a marketing perspective. Which customer are you after? If you're after that higher end, more discerning a diner, you're going to do obviously a sit down with great service, and the food's going to be spectacular, and the whole ambiance means everything to you. If you're going to go after somebody that's looking at an $8, kind of meal, and they're almost, it's interesting, we saw in our research coming out of the National Restaurant Association, there's almost no limit to what they're willing to pay for delivery. Because they want the amount of food when they want it, right? They're gaming or whatever they're doing,
Yeah.
and so you just got to know the segment that you're in.
Yeah.
And I think one of the myths, if you read my bio, you'll see I've been in the e-commerce business since the 90s. There's this myth called omnichannel that has never been true in e-commerce, but in the restaurant industry, people in the restaurant industry still kind of cling to that. Like, I can be all things to all people. I always use the example of Saks, right? If I want to buy a suit, because I'm coming to Columbus and everyone wears suits here, I'm going to go to Saks, and I want the experience. I'm going to stand in front of those mirrors, and I'm going to get measured, and someone's going to bring me an Evian, and that's like a dining experience. It's an experience. Saks also sells like super high-end $700 coffee makers, which I also want to buy online. I'm not going to go to Saks.com and buy that coffee maker. I'm going to go to Amazon. I'm going to go to a purpose-built e-commerce facility because for that job, the job's to be done, that job is better done by an e-commerce company than it is by a department store. And that's the way we look at prepared food delivery is, restaurants are fantastic. And, Cameron Mitchell, probably not in the room here, but he's one of our investors.
He has some of his people here.
Okay. But again, it's like, restaurants are full. Again, delivery is still a thing, right? So I think these restaurateurs like Mike Cunningham and Indy and Cameron here are starting to recognize delivery as a category. Like not an incremental business, but actually an entire category to itself, just like pizza is a category. And that purpose-built, dedicated facility and system is what wins. You talk about customer sentiment. 95% of our orders, one of the numbers we track religiously is recurring revenue, reorder rate, right? So 95% of our orders are from existing customers. When someone comes in and has this ideal experience with no extra fees, they're not going back to DoorDash, right? It doesn't matter who my favorite brand is that I want to go to dinner with or lunch with, but when I want delivered food, I'm going to a purpose-built delivery option.
Do you think we'll see any of this spin the opposite direction where a virtual brand would, branch out into brick and mortar?
Well, I think we are seeing it, because a lot of people, they're recognizing, and I see this all over the country. We have recently, last year, we spun out our software as a separate company called Empower.Deliver that we license to other delivery kitchens. And a lot of these people are trying to build front of houses and better pickup experiences because the economics and the experience of delivery is so bad, they're trying to hedge their bet. So you see a lot of these with, I don't know, do you guys have any front of house and maker kitchens?
We put like a nice little area to pick up food, and we put like order kiosks. But I'd say a lot of our tenants are 50 to over 50% of these people are picking it up themselves. Mm-hmm. I'm super stingy. I pick everything up. I don't I don't care how far I have to drive because I don't like paying the fees. But I have no problem picking it up. I just don't want to eat it there. Right? I don't want to take it home and eat it at home. So we have a lot of the customers of our tenants will come by and pick it up, and they love the kiosk because with our system you can go through all the restaurants and you can order tons of different stuff, put it in your cart like Amazon, just check out once and everybody's got their food. And you can order it and come by and pick it up. You don't pay any fees. Pick it up on your way home. It'll be ready for you in 10 minutes. So, but to your point there, we just lost a tenant this week who moved out. He graduated out of our kitchen and he moved into a pizza restaurant. And he's, so it happens all the time. We're like 2 to 1 people outgrowing us to people failing over the last 8 years.
Problem with the pickup is you lose control of quality, right? Like we deliver for free, and our promise to the customer is your food is never going to be more than 7 minutes old because we can control the cook on every station. We time everything based on driver proximity. So even if your overall order takes 45 minutes to get to you, our delivery zone is only 7 minutes. Therefore, we're not going to cook the food till we know where the driver is. When the driver's 7 minutes away, we fire the food. If pad thai takes 7 minutes and a cheeseburger takes 3 minutes, start the pad thai, start the cheeseburger. They're done at the same time as drivers arriving. We were in Kroger briefly here in Dublin, Ohio, and they really wanted pickup. They want the store experience. Chris, we're bringing in 35,000 people a week, and so one day I got this 1-star review for a Nashville hot chicken sandwich. And so I look it up, and I can see that sandwich sat on my counter for 18 minutes. So I called the person, and he was really nice. I'm like, look, I'm just trying to understand why you didn't take delivery. Well, delivery sucks. Well, okay. In that world it does, in ours it doesn't. So tell me about your pickup experience. Well, I went to Kroger. I had ordered the food. I went to Kroger, but then I thought I'd get something that would take me 3 minutes, but of course took him 12 minutes, right? And then what'd you do? Well, I picked up my food 18 minutes after it was made, walked across a 6-acre parking lot for 5 minutes, put my groceries in the car, took the food in, drove home the 7 minutes of in our zone, unloaded his car. He's like, holy cow, it was probably an hour before I ate that sandwich. I was like, yeah, not my fault. Yeah. Take delivery, But that's what happens when you lose control of delivery. If you don't control it, DoorDash is now mandating batching, right? Because they're trying to get drivers more jobs per hour. So they're going to your restaurant, and then they're going to go to his restaurant, and then maybe another restaurant, and then maybe to the customer. So now that food is way older. Like every solution to this isn't helping the customer experience. It's not giving that hospitality that got us into this business in the first place.
Well, and that plays right into my next question. I promised we'd talk about Mr. Beast, so I want to make sure I get this question in here. For those that aren't familiar, the popular YouTuber launched his virtual restaurant brand, Mr. Beast Burger, in late 2020, and now has 2,000 plus locations worldwide. However, there have been a lot of issues with the quality control to the point where Mr. Beast is now suing Virtual Dining Concepts, which is the organization he partnered with to launch the brand, for serving poor quality food and damaging his reputation. Virtual Dining Concepts is countersuing Mr. Beast for not meeting his contractual obligations. So what are the lessons that we can kind of learn from this whole situation about how to do this better?
I'm monopolizing to you.
Well, we've learned a lot of lessons through the last few years with food delivery partners. One, we try to embrace the drivers through the pandemic. They had a hard time going into buildings if they didn't have masks. And a lot of our community partners, again, ECDI, who's here today, Steve Fireman, provided hand sanitizer and masks for us at the commissary kitchen that we could actually give to drivers to make sure that they could get into buildings to deliver our food. The customer experience is always 100% top of mind for us. We use sealed bags before it was popular to use sealed bags. So a lot of thought goes behind this food delivery game. We reinvest a lot of dollars back into making sure that we're at the top of the list. And as we talked about here about whether people pick up or whether people like the delivery, for us, it's probably like a 60-40, and that's because of our location. We're downtown in the North Market across from the Greater Columbus Convention Center. So everybody who's staying at the Hilton, all-night gaming, like John said, they're ordering, and that's delivery. They're not interested in coming to find 1700 Old Leonard Avenue and pick up their food. But at our location in Bridge Park, up in Dublin, they absolutely are. They definitely want that experience. So I guess it depends on location and what kind of customer reaction. But again, the amount of time. I have one designated operations director that is on the phone every day, all day long with UberEats, and we have a certain rep that we work with constantly to make sure that the economics are right and that the partnership is there. We're not doing this by ourselves. We have almost 100 employees. And that's 100 families that rely on these food delivery systems. And if they don't ding and people don't order and food's not hot and the customer's not happy, then our business model, that part of the portfolio starts to fail. So.
Yeah, if you don't know Lisa's model between food trucks and then doing the markets, and now she has a brick and mortar, I mean, just that's what I love about our industry. People work at it and work at it and work at it and adjust and learn. You've come up with a great model. I didn't know as much about your model. And Lisa's she's the classic entrepreneur, figuring out ways to take that really good brand and finding ways to deliver it to consumers in a way that they're happy about that. The food's good, the service is good, the promise is good, and the brand kind of surrounds all of that, right? And so that's what's great about all these changes in the technology, because you're on it, right? And you're figuring it out, you're getting ahead of it a little bit, and you're setting a great example for our industry. So thank you. Yeah.
And the other thing, John, is that, the workforce is different. If you think about restaurant before, back of house, there's a chef or an expediter. No one that was working the line in the kitchen ever came to the prestigious dining room, right? It was always the server that went up front with a certain uniform on, or a manager. Now I take people who have to learn how to use a tablet. They have to be able to answer the phone correctly and be able to give a driver directions to be able to find us. So we're upskilling the existing workforce while bringing new people on to be able to be innovative, because we are competitive. Did I mention that? No. Thank you.
Well, like if you want good tacos, right, and the name is Dos Hermanos, you've got a pretty good idea you're going to get good tacos, right? So, but if I'm going to like Mr. Smith's Tacos, I probably am not going to stop there, right? I'll probably keep going to Dos Hermanos. So the idea that if you come to a Maker Kitchens location and you're getting, our tenants are not generally doing what's outside of their wheelhouse. So we have dedicated customers for our tenants who, like Rich the gumbo guy. This guy gets so many one-star reviews because he yells at tenants. He forgets to turn his cash register or his deal off, so people are ordering from him, and then he'll write online like, that was your fault, I wasn't there. But his gumbo is so good, he just has this following, and he's famous for treating his customers terribly. But if you come,
Seinfeld show.
Right. But if you come to Maker Kitchens, one of like high street kitchens, and you order, for instance, we've got this guy Ozzy who's doing shawarma. If you order shawarma at high street kitchens, you're going to get it from Ozzy, who was born and raised in Afghanistan, moved here with his family, and knows how to make shawarma, right? And if you want to get, we have an Indian restaurant, and these guys all moved here from India. All they do is Indian. So you're not getting one guy, you're not getting Mr. Beast, or you're not getting Chuck E. Cheese. So that's how we kind of keep the quality control, because we make sure that these people are doing what they're good at. And if they start straying from that, they're probably going to fail.
And
The customer's going to vote with their dollars, just like any other restaurant, right? That, Mr. Beast was perfectly happy for 3 years making millions of dollars off of this until everyone ate Mr. Beast burger once, just like these Uber drivers, and no one ever reordered it. They have a hard time tracking that. They couldn't keep track of quality. And as soon as his reputation started taking the tank, that's when he stopped. But, this was a flash in the pan concept. It was an idea that's time came and is gone now, thankfully.
Yeah, well, and I think it's time to move on to audience questions. So thank you all. It is CMC's longstanding tradition to take audience questions. Mantra Moody with CMC is curating questions from today's live stream audience. For those of you with us in person, please join Mantra at the microphone. Out of respect for others, please keep your questions brief and to the point so we can get as many as possible. Please also keep in mind the questions end with a question mark. Mantra, what is our first question?
Okay, thank you. So, given how important drivers are to delivery, how will the wide-scale availability of autonomous cars change your businesses?
So, I don't know if there will be wide-scale adoption of autonomous cars, and so we don't think about that too much, because I'll believe it when I see it. Secondly, they have to obey the law. They're going to have to go slow. Like, there's a lot of, our people in our system will always be faster than an autonomous car. So for good or evil, we do a lot of bikes as well. I just think the flexibility is going to be greater with people, so we're not worried about it.
Our main competitor, who may not have something to do with Uber in the past, they use robots to take the food from the kitchen to the front. And all the old tenants from that come over to us absolutely hate the robots. Why can't I just walk this with my own 2 feet to the front? So yeah, I don't see a whole lot.
I can tell you over at Ohio State, they have the little delivery bots all over that campus, and my 18-year-olds that are in my my strategy class, they love it. So it just depends, right? You have to know your audience, and they think it's sort of a fun thing to see a little thing come up and knock on the door. So.
Yeah, but it's still a lot of work, right? You said you've got to load the thing, right? Driver pulls up, we're handing food. This is how our system works. Driver pulls in, food. Driver pulls in, food. Customer waiting, food. Route, laps. Now I've got to stop. I've got to unload this thing. In Columbus today for lunch, we might do 450, 500 orders. How many robots do I need at that kind of volume? It's just not scalable.
It's not practical for you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As this thing actually gets real and quality becomes something that's important, those things, like your 18-year-olds they don't care about quality. They like the novelty of the cooler and the whole thing.
They just want beer.
Yeah. It's 18-year-olds.
Say we're giving it to them.
One of the kind of unexpected bonuses we found, we use these food lockers in the front, and with the software that our tenants use, it tells you which locker to put it in the front, because for a long time we had this problem where, back in like the beginning of the pandemic, somebody's sitting there waiting for the Uber Eats driver, the DoorDash driver, while they got like 10 cheeseburgers burning, right? So we contracted with this company called Boxy, and it tells you which locker to put it in. But people love it because it's like, it says it's their first name, last initial, and they have to type in their last name, and the locker lights up, and they like can't wait to come and open a locker.
Yeah. Interactive fun. There you go. Great. What's our next question?
I'm Carol McGuire, and I think this whole discussion is fascinating. COVID certainly changed a lot of ways in which consumers consume. What's the next thing coming down the road for all of you as we look forward past some of the disruption that's already occurring? What do we think is going to come next in certainly in consumer patterns in restaurants?
That I'm the last person. I have no clue. I'm literally just trying to keep up. Everything that's happened has surprised me.
As opposed to prognosticating, or?
It's hard to predict exactly where it's going. I will tell you what the large companies are doing, because they have the money and they have the people and the expertise. They're pushing to an entire digital model. So they want to have a situation in the future where all transactions are done digitally, so either through an app or a website. They really don't want to have to do a front counter anymore. These are large companies that are typically in the fast business, the fast food or fast casual. That is definitely coming. That's not, it's not questionable now. How much we'll all like it and so forth, that's all being discovered. But I would say right now the amount of money being put into that is as much as any other R&D I'm seeing in the industry. So that's one segment. So that's coming for sure. As I talk to my sit-down restaurants are very successful, their model's doing very well at the same time, but completely different. They don't want digital. They don't want a little robot delivering your steak or your salad. They still want to do that great service and all the hospitality and sell those bottles of wine for $150. So that, I think, has settled back down into something that people are making money, again, and doing really well. So it just depends on the segment.
So, and I'm interested to ask Chris, out of the whole process, start to finish, where do you see the most money? Where do you see the most, where's technology going to drive this the most? The money's going into places like Toast and, all these companies, but where's this going to go?
We believe in the purpose-built delivery kitchen model. It's better for the customer, it's better for the driver, it's better food, it's better working conditions. We're able to hire introverts, we like to say, people who don't want to deal with customers, don't want to wipe down tables, don't want to, they just want to cook, and And so, we feel like we check all the boxes. We just launched franchising here in Ohio last Thursday, so anybody who's interested in franchising cluster trucks, let me know. But, but we think of it as a category, and this is a category that we've spent the last 4 years finding out what doesn't work, right? And, everything from Next Bite to virtual dining brands to Mr. Beast to, none of that worked. And DoorDash doesn't work, right? We can wish it would work, but it doesn't work. And if it does work, it's going to be built on fees. And if it's built on fees, it's not going to work when there's a fee-less solution that's better, right? So that's where we see the future, is that prepared food delivery is a category, and there will be category winners, not incremental, 10 orders, 15 orders a day going out the back door of my favorite restaurant. I think.
Move on to our next question.
Hi, Walker Evans. I really appreciate, what all of you have been talking about in terms of quality control and the level of transparency that you're kind of bringing to the room about your business and how you operate. But at the end of the day, I think these third-party apps are still really kind of algorithmically designed to almost trick customers. So, for example, if I'm a 24-year-old, maybe I just moved to a new city, I want to pull up an app and order from a local mom and pop business and really start to explore this new city that I moved into, but the app is tricking me into ordering from a chain with a different name that I'm not used to. It's kind of, you're almost kind of setting that person up to have a bad time or be tricked into doing something they didn't want to do. So is there any advice you would give maybe to just a general customer to help them navigate these kinds of systems and actually get the good food that they're looking for at the end of the day?
Go to makerkitchens.com. Type in your zip code, and it'll tell you the nearest location we have.
That's a great answer, but also go to the restaurant sites.
Right, exactly.
Go
So
to the
get off
restaurant
DoorDash.
sites. Right? Don't go to DoorDash first, and I know it's hard to tell young people who live in the app world, but go to the restaurant sites and learn the restaurants, right? And we have a great publication that does some restaurant reviews here, so look at that kind of stuff.
But again, this isn't much different than any kind of e-commerce. I had a software company once called Compendium Software, and we used the use case of a condominium in Vail. So there's this condominium in Vail, and people used to write in books. Do you remember that? Some of you are old enough to remember there used to be a book on the coffee table. Oh, I had such a wonderful time. My wife learned to ski here. Turn the page, and it's like, I brought my fraternity brothers here, and we had the best time drinking in all the bars. Turn the page, and it's like my grandfather had never seen the mountain. Same condo, 20 different stories, right? So as a marketer, you want to make sure you're getting all of those stories out, because I want the frat boys, and I want the 6-year-old ski lessons, and I want the college sorority reunion all coming to the same condo. And that's not so dissimilar to people trying to describe their food in a way that hits a certain segment that may be different than another segment, right? So that's what we're learning. I mean, restaurants are no offense to anyone here, I'm in the business, but the dinosaur of the e-commerce world, right? Like, we are the last industry, and we're learning things that, Amazon learned or Shopify learned 15 years ago. We're just trying to find our way.
Yeah, the key is go to Yelp, use Yelp. Every one of our tenants is on Yelp, and they all have really high stars because they all specialize in whatever it is, except for that guy Rich I told you guys about. But which everything is like 3 stars. Food was amazing, but Rich is a jerk. But if you go to Yelp, you can go directly to that restaurant, and then you'll have your choice of ordering, and you can get it delivered through DoorDash. But that's the way to do it for sure.
Dos Hermanos, Columbus.com
Yeah.
is where you can find us.
Great. And what's our next question?
Hi, I'm Beth Urban, and my organization has a commercial kitchen space that we're getting ready to build out. And I am just curious about what you're seeing as market needs right now, market trends. Now, and I know Karen asked about the future, but I'm going to ask you to prognosticate again about the future. So as we're thinking about what to do with this commercial kitchen space, I want to make sure we're hitting a market need.
Shamelessly jump in on this one. So let's say, I'm just going to use a quick little anecdote. I'll try to be done in a minute. But let's say you decide you want to do brownies, and you make the best brownies in the world. You start making them in your kitchen. Before us, when you got to a certain point where you couldn't make them in your kitchen anymore because you want to sell at Whole Foods and the different markets that require a commercial kitchen, you had to make this big jump. You had to find a space. You had to build the space out. You had to get all of your permits. You got to put every utility in your name, and then you got to manage that space. This is a giant leap, right? Until we came along, and now we're this stepping stone because now you're moving into your own commercial kitchen, and everything is, and you guys see what I'm doing here, right? I'm literally trying to get her to move into one of our kitchens. But we do the same thing for consumer packaged goods and for caterers, everybody, because we're basically bridging this massive gap that was there before. You're signing a 1-year lease instead of a 5-year lease. Nobody knows how to manage a grease interceptor or clean their hood every 6 months. We do all that for you. So we always tell people, look at both sides of this thing, but this is a gap that needs to be filled. It wasn't filled before, right? And commissary kitchens where you're renting by the hour have been doing a good job of this. So.
Another option, as you look at all this, another option would be to talk to ECDI. Are you friends with them?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
We had talked beforehand, and I was looking for him, so thank you for that.
Well, think about automation too, smart ovens and your equipment stack. So you have the flexibility to make multiple kinds of cuisines, or if you need to pivot quickly. I was at one of our customers for our software company, Empower, down in Dallas, and they had this super massive double wok setup, right? And it makes unbelievable Asian food, like it's really authentic. We make our Asian food in a saute station where we can also fry an egg. This thing is a bottleneck, right? Because if they get 5 orders and they already have an order in there, then they get the second order in there. Now they're backed up 7 minutes on that first order before they can get the third order in. And suddenly 7 orders that need that wok, they're in the weeds. So this is maybe Restaurant 101, but it was a big learning for me that, we use like Ovention ovens. Middleby has all kinds of, what do they call it, the Pixar ovens or something like that. But, smart ovens there's a lot of technology coming, and jump in on it.
Retail outlet, kind of a way to serve, how we talked about how we give back to that neighborhood. Whether it's just a window, or maybe it's just open for lunch, or it is a full countertop. But not just the kitchen, but a way to serve as well.
Great.
Thank you.
And we're going to take one more audience question.
All right, last question. What would be your advice to a young entrepreneur aiming to make it in the restaurant industry?
I'm curious for these answers.
Honest answer.
I would say diversify, diversify, diversify. We have 3 food trucks, 1 taco cart. We have a concession stand at Lauer.com, also at the Greater Columbus Convention Center. We have a small stall that's very affordable downtown in the historic North Market. We duplicated that same stall that's very small in Dublin, Ohio at Bridge Park. And then, we took the big leap of faith of the 2-story restaurant with a full alcohol license at Easton Town Center. Some of those work very well. Some work different times of the year very well. Food delivery turns the wheel because it keeps some cash flow going while maximizing the use of the staff and the facility. So diversify, diversify, diversify.
Call the Ohio Restaurant Association. We'll help you not make all the mistakes and give you a better chance to. But we have so many organizations that are helpful as well for people who are just starting off. Everything from ECDI to there's just a lot of help, and if people spend some time on the upfront doing the research, oftentimes we catch people they've already dove in too quick. They've signed a lease, they have this concept all figured out, but they don't even have a P&L. They don't even understand how to put a business model together. So we just encourage people, back it up a little bit, and let's talk before you jump in.
And get that break even as low as possible. Don't.
Definitely.
And read Kitchen Confidential. Anyone who's ever going to open a restaurant has to start there, right? Because just because you make great brownies does not mean that you're going to be a successful brownie maker.
That's right.
Great. Everyone, I wish we had more time, but I'm getting the signal to wrap things up. So we'll turn it back to CMC board member Ellen Block for concluding remarks.
Thanks, Susan. Well, I hope everyone found today's forum fascinating. I know I was really impressed with all the different like varieties of virtual kitchens. I don't think I had ever really given it as much thought, so I really appreciated today's conversation. Thank you to the Grange Insurance Audubon Center for hosting us. Thank you to our virtual seat patrons and the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for supporting today's live stream. Thank you to Lisa and Dos Hermanos for the boxed lunches. Yeah. That was a very exciting find today. And our very special appreciation to all of our speakers today, Chris Baggett, John Barker, Bennett Goldberg, Lisa Gutierrez, and our host, Susan Post. Please make plans now to attend next week's forum, Black Mothers Matter, Combating the Maternal Mortality Epidemic. Please also take a moment to answer the short survey that's in your forum flyers. We could not do this without you. Thank you for joining us and have a great afternoon.